Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I'm Ryan, and today I'll be talking about The Bounty. The true story of the mutiny on the Bounty. Has history been wrong for 200 years? This is by Caroline Alexander. She's also the author of The Endurance. I read this on my Kindle, and this was published in 2003. Oh, wow. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but that was more than 20 years ago. I really like this book. Let me tell you that, this is version 2. I don't know what that means. But I really enjoy this. Let's be real here for a second. Mutinies are not good. They're not good. And this one is probably, I think, the most famous mutiny. The Mutiny on the Bounty. This happened on April 28th, 1789. That's a while ago. On the Bounty, which is an 87-foot ship commanded by Lieutenant William Bligh. And the mutiny was really orchestrated or led by a guy named Fletcher Christian and about 18 other individuals. It's not a huge ship, but about half of the people were in the mutiny, more of the able seamen, the lower ones. And this ship was going to the Pacific to pick up breadfruit from the Pacific Islands to take to, I think that's the East Indies, to take to the West Indies. Basically to provide a easily farmed, reliable food source for slaves in the Caribbean. Sammy is here and she's smelling stuff in my study. I don't know why. So I didn't know a lot coming into this book. I have heard of the Bounty and the mutiny. I did not know much. I've been confused with the Mutiny on the Bounty, the Cane Mutiny, which is I think that's fictional. But this is really a famous one. Why did I read this? I just finished Left Behind, so check that out. And there is a captain in that book who is part of the mutiny, Peter Hayward. And the two pictures on my thumbnail, the one on the left is William Bligh, who later is a rear admiral, and the other one is Peter Hayward. And let me just say, Sammy, you don't have to do that. That's what I wanted to say. No, what I wanted to say is between the two, I think that Peter Hayward was not a good person. And he did make amends, but I don't think he ever took responsibility. And I think his innocence, was not there. But also, he was saved just because his family had money. All right, so here's what happens. We have our group led by William Bligh, who is, let's just say usually there was a group of officers on a ship and then a contingent of Marines, which basically acted as security on the ship. Kind of like just an in-house security for the officers. Why would you need that? Well, a lot of the enlisted at this point, the seamen were impressed. They were taken from other ships and forced to serve. Sometimes they had gangs that would go out and grab people and put them on ships, and they only served for short periods of time. Very different than what we experience today. This ship, the Bounty, didn't have that. It was an 85-footer, which is crazy when you think about where it went. Going to the Pacific to look for breadfruit. It was going to get a lot of breadfruit and also different plants to take back to England for William Bligh's benefactor. So they're going. Everything seems okay. And they go for the Horn. They want to go around the Horn, but they're really held up near Portsmouth in England for too long. And by the time they get to the Horn, the sea is horrible. So they eventually decide to go through the Cape of Good Hope, which is the southern tip of Africa, instead of going through the Horn, which is at the tip of South America. So they go the opposite way, and basically they're going to go past Australia, stop in Tasmania, I think, Van Diem land at the time, and then head over to Fiji. And there's all other names for this, but Tahiti is one of the places they went. Our main character, Captain Bligh, was also on Captain Cook, James Cook's third and final voyage. So, and that's a famous explorer from the 1700s, which I will be reading a book about in the future, having been motivated by reading this book. They all start to kind of come together. There's so much overlap between some of these people that if you just kind of are motivated by reading about somebody in one book, you're probably going to find another book because of somebody else who shows up, and it just kind of worked its way out. So they go to Tahiti. Tahiti is known for beautiful, uninhibited women who like to do it a lot of different ways. And the guys like it a lot. And they spread Europe's wonderful gift to the Pacific venereal diseases. They also learn the language, and they really want to kind of settle down. They're there for a while because they've got to cultivate some of these breadfruit plants to put on the ship. And they need that. That's going to take a while. So I think it's maybe like a year or something, or 6 months, 8 months. But they really do love the people. They're described as, it's basically like heaven. It is paradise on earth. Everyone's so nice, and they're just giving, and they're open, and it's not all good, but they're peaceful, and they just have a great time, and these guys do not want to leave, but eventually they have to. So Bligh is known to be a little hot-headed sometimes, but honestly, what I hear him saying in this book is not that much worse than what I would have heard on ships that I was on. And, that's now, or not, that's, 20 years ago. It really, I don't think, I kind of entered it thinking that this guy must be really abusive, and it doesn't sound like he was. It sounds like eventually that's the story, because the people who were spreading kind of stories to excuse the mutineers were from some wealthy families in England. They wanted to tarnish Bligh's record. So they have to head through the Strait of something. And it's basically between New Guinea and Australia. This is part of what the Admiralty wanted. They wanted them to go through and then find, chart the way. It's going to be rough. And before this happens, there's a mutiny. It's led by Fletcher Christian, who was just on watch, and about 18 other guys are involved. They go down and grab Bligh, who is in his bed, in his rack, and they bring him up. He doesn't have any pants on. He does have a shirt on, his nightshirt, and they basically say, we're going to put you in a boat. They put him in a decent craft that's actually bigger than they were originally supposed to get, and they send him off. But before they do, others are joining him. His loyal following, some people that didn't really align with Christian, even if they weren't really fans of Lieutenant Bligh, they were still put in there. And there were some people who were loyalists to Bligh who weren't allowed to leave because they had skills that Fletcher Christian didn't want to lose. So they get into this boat. I think it's 23 feet. There's 18 of them, I think, ish, in the boat, and they travel something like 2.6 to 3.6 thousand miles, and make it to, I think, was it Jakarta or some? See, all these names change for the cities. I don't think it's Jakarta, but they make it to a Dutch outpost. After landing a few places, they're running out of food. It's dangerous where they have to go anyway, but there's also some islands, the friendly islands, which aren't necessarily friendly and can result in them being attacked by the natives. They're not all as friendly as Tahitians. They make it to a Dutch fort and get on a ship and are able to go back to England. There, Bligh shows up and he's like, hey, the ship was taken. And the Admiralty's like, oh, no, no, no. Don't take ships. We're going to come get you. So they send off a ship. And that ship is commanded by Edward Edwards. Wow. That's a creative name. They go to Tahiti. They're looking all over the place, but they eventually go to Tahiti and they find out that there are some castaways. Or not castaways, I'm sorry. Mutineers. So some of them come out and meet the ship. Others run off and have to be caught. Eventually, it's clear that there's also castaways. Mutineers that ran away. And also the main mutineer, Fletcher Christian, is not there. And the Bounty's not there. Where did they go? We're not sure. We'll find out later. They're going through the same straits that are dangerous between New Guinea, is it Papua New Guinea? Papua New Guinea and Australia. And what happens there? This ship hits a rock and sinks. And now all these guys, they didn't all live, but including the prisoners, they have to get out now and find their way to a Dutch settlement so they can be saved too. Wow. How unlucky is that? And I think, now I'm kind of blanking on it, but I'm pretty sure there were a couple guys from the Bounty that were on this ship to look for the mutineers. So they get back to England, and these guys are going to be under trial. This book talks about the preparation. It really talks about the background of the Bounty and the individuals on the Bounty, really thoroughly what it can be found about the individuals, because there weren't great records for poor individuals, but especially the individuals with families that were known in different parts of the United Kingdom. And we also get to see the preparation for the court-martial and the court-martial. The main figures are a guy named Morrison, Peter Heywood, and those are the two big ones. There were also guys who didn't have any problem because they were already cited by Bligh as being loyal, that they were held against their will on the ship. Bligh has already left on a second trip to get breadfruit because the first trip wasn't successful because of the mutiny. So he is not there for a good chunk of the preparation for the court-martial, where they have to find captains to be in the court-martial and determine who can do what. And there's some preparation done by the mutineers to prepare for the court-martial. But what we start seeing is this division between some of the mutineers, and there was a division. They actually kind of had a falling out once they had the mutiny, and some of them went to Tahiti and just stayed there, and then the Bounty left with Fletcher Christensen and some of the others, and they didn't know where they were going to go. It really there were factions that broke out. And then there were factions of the factions kind of too. So for a good part of this, Bligh is gone on another mission that is successful, and his team, well, while he's gone, they're really figuring out. Bligh was also court-martialed because he lost the ship. It was kind of a formality, and they figured out that there was nothing he could have done to avoid the mutiny. So it wasn't like because of the lack of preparation he lost His Majesty's ship. So we get to see this kind of build up, and you really start to see there's a division between the poor guys who don't really have any preparation and the individuals of means. These were kind of like the midshipmen, the officers of the ship, that were able to reach out for legal representation, or even almost this kind of like PR guy that was handling almost like a fixer. And the big recipient of that was Peter Heywood. Peter Heywood, there's a lot of discussion. In this book, you really get to see what was alleged. You get to see it from multiple angles. the process for the arguments for the prosecution and the defense, and see how things line up. But my takeaway was Peter Haywood really, I think he was guilty, and I think he got off. Well, he didn't get off. I'm sorry. So eventually, you have a decision. They're found guilty, and they're going to hang. They will be killed. They're executed. But before that can happen, two of the individuals, Haywood and Morrison, are recommended for His Majesty's mercy, which I guess is like a pardon, and that takes a little bit of time too. You get to see what his family's going through, what he's going through. His sister, Nessie, is Bessie or Nessie? His brother, and his representation, and you also get to see some of the lead up before they get back to England and the preparation there while they're arrested and they're in irons. But eventually, Peter Haywood does get a pardon. He gets a mercy granted from the king, and he has a full naval career after that, which is why we saw him in Left for Dead. But what I thought was really interesting, all that was interesting, and just kind of the steps taken by other people to capitalize on the mutiny while it was still popular. What I thought was interesting, at the end of the book, Christine Alexander goes into kind of the rest of the story. And we find out that the bounty ended up on an island. They went to Tahiti and they picked up some ladies and they basically kidnapped them and some guys. And then they ended up on an island that was a nice island. I forget what it's called now. Starts with a P. There they decided to destroy the ship. So they were kind of forcing themselves to stay there. And they created a nice colony. And eventually the Western world found it. And it became kind of a stopping off place. I forgot Pinot. No, that's not it. So we get more information about what happened from the individuals who survived. At this point, there's really only one survivor that was part of the mutiny and offspring that are, Fletcher Christian's Tahitian wife's kid with him. People are led to believe that there's it's this Christian development, that it's the Western men that brought, order to the savages, but really the cleanliness and the good health was Tahitian, and some of the more negative stuff was the stuff they brought from England. But then a lot of the mutineers were killed, either all at once or over a few years, by the Tahitian men who they were treating like slaves. They were also using the women who didn't want to be there. They were kidnapped. Still exists, that island still exists. That should be pretty obvious, but there's still a settlement there, and there's a plaque for the bounty there. And it's really interesting because there's some pretty clear indications that Peter Haywood was more involved than he wanted people to know, and it really was his family and people connected to the Christian family that over the years presented it more like William Bligh was a hothead. And he was a little of a hothead, but it wasn't any different than most ships experienced. And that's why I think today it's kind of like, I think in the back of your mind, if you know anything about it, you're just kind of like, well, I think it was William Bligh's fault, right? He was an abusive captain and they rebelled, but it was really Fletcher Christian got drunk. He was drinking all night. He went to sleep, and 30 minutes before his watch, he was awoken. His pride was hurt because he'd been yelled at. He was accused of stealing a coconut from the captain, and he basically just lost it and fomented a mutiny. And people just kind of let it happen, or they didn't fight back. There probably could have been a fight, and there wasn't. I really enjoyed the book, though, because I didn't know much about this, and that time period, it's like a famous mutiny, and so much of what happened is reflected in other services after that. This is before the Admiral Lord Nelson and the Trafalgar battle. This is around the same time that people are getting their heads cut off in France in the French Revolution, which is crazy. The stuff that they said there that was done is just so brutal in France. I've never really read about it, so I'm kind of like, maybe I should. But it's crazy. And William Bligh died as a rear admiral in 1817. A lot of these people died fairly early from different injuries. Malaria was I'm a little sick right now. It's not malaria. I think I got a cold or sniffly thing or whatever. But a lot of these people died early. It was long. It was a little bit longer, but really, I think worth it. And I enjoyed it so much. And it's a famous mutiny. And I think in the end, I'll show you in my final thumbnail for this video. I did not come away liking Peter Heywood. I think he got away with stuff. Maybe he lived a good life later, but he wasn't innocent. I think he lied under oath, and he just got lucky and had money. And that was probably more of it was the having the money. The luck of having the money, I guess. But even that, like his family was, and the Christians were also bankrupt and having their own problems. So this was a must read, and I enjoyed it. And it's a good starting place if you want to start pretty far back and get a feel for what service was like in between wars, at the beginning of a war, in the Royal Navy, and one of the most famous mutinies and court cases relating to that mutiny ever. This is the book. And I think it definitely takes a new look at a lot of the information that was kind of buried by some of the actors or people connected to the actors, especially the mutineers, over the years. So this is a more honest look at a Lieutenant Bligh, who eventually was a Rear Admiral Bligh, who did the honorable thing, but is remembered for being something else, I think. That's it. Thanks for being here today. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.